Rightio, so this is Dutch's video of his training. Unfortunately, we had some audio issues with the clip, so I'm going to have to voice over it, and hopefully I can explain it as well as I did in the moment. So essentially, in this video, we are working on our loose lead walking. Towards the end of the video, we do some sits and stuff as well, just as a basic example of how we can incorporate training or general obedience training into our loose lead walking skills. At the moment here, I'm actually loading a yes marker for Dutch. Essentially, what that looks like is you say the word yes and then deliver food to the dog within 1 second. It's really, really simple. You literally just hand the dog the food and create that positive association to the word yes, and we can then use that to mark behavior that we like in our loose lead walking practice. So what our general criteria is for a loose lead walk is that the dog is walking either in line with us or behind us. So I like to use the example of the dog's rib cage is in line with my thigh, or like their rib cage is in line with my sort of center of mass. And if they're any further forward than that, then I consider that to not meet the criteria. And that's when you can sort of see in this video here, I'm sort of explaining it, and he was standing up really well there, as far as his shoulders / rib cage was sort of in line with my leg. But essentially what we want to do is when we and you will see this in the examples coming up, but when we're doing our loose lead walking practice, we want the dog to be in line or behind us, okay? And if they do start to drift in front of us or even surge in front of us, we want to plant our lead foot and do a 180. And we want that 180 degree turn to be pretty prompt to create a significant change in direction. And if the dog does continue momentum forward on the line of direction that they were traveling, they're going to hit the end of the lead and then have to come back off that to follow us in the opposite direction. What that does is essentially corrects the dog in the moment. You will see it here. As he drifted out in front of me, I pivoted, and it really doesn't take that much work to actually establish this behavior. Essentially, you just keep walking in a straight line. Once that dog drifts out in front of you, you pivot 180 degrees, and the dog will hit the end of the lead, correct themselves, and then have to follow you. What this does is it essentially teaches the dog that they need to start to tune into the handler and watch where they're going to avoid that correction. And it really is the key to success with our loose lead walking. We start off with by just walking zigzags. Doesn't necessarily have to be backwards and forth. You can do a 90 degree turn and stuff like that, but you just want to mix it up a bit and keep the dog guessing. And at the start of this behavior, we want to really only be doing these turns as the dog does drift in front of us. Okay, so that's the step one, I guess you could say, of this behavior, where we are essentially changing direction when the dog does drift in front of us. Once we get some compliance and the dog is walking on our side, we want to, like for a longer period of time, say 10, 15 steps, then we can start doing turns intermittently and completely randomly, and that really encourages the dog to tune into us and watch where we're going. Transitional, once we've got, I want you guys to do that training and just do those turns as he's surging in front. And if you do get that compliance where he is starting to walk on your heel quite well, then you can start to throw in those random turns. But as you can see, he's done quite well today. We did start to work in some obedience into this, so we're asking him to sit, and that is every time we stop, we want him to sit, okay? So essentially that is something you can work into your training as well if you feel confident. Pretty well, you just walk, and then when you stop, you apply leash pressure upwards, okay? And you can push down on his bum as well if he doesn't if he doesn't sit within sort of 1 to 2 seconds, you can apply that pressure down on his bum as well to get him to sit. But as soon as his bum hits the ground, we want that leash pressure to come off. I will probably have to... I do some repetitions at the end of the video that will give you a better demonstration of what that pressure on and pressure off does look like. That was a pretty good rep there. You can see when we stopped, we applied that upward pressure. He sat, the pressure came off. We then marked, we then released him with a terminal marker, which is free. Now, a terminal marker is essentially just telling the dog that they no longer have to do that behavior and that they are free to do whatever they like, and that's why we use the word free. But yes, as you can see, very reliable. Well, he is getting very reliable with that behavior. We're starting to work on some distance now as well. So essentially, we're asking him to sit, and then we're taking a step away from him. If he does break when we take that step away, we want to mark reapply that leash pressure upwards, and once his bum hits the ground, we can allow that pressure to come off. Once he's in position for a couple of seconds, we can release with the terminal marker free. You can see just then I did do a down rep, so essentially getting him to go into a down position. This is a little bit more advanced. You don't really need to be practicing this week, but just putting him through his paces and just starting that progression for next week's training. And yeah, to summarize this week's training, I really just want you guys to try and get a couple of sessions in with this loose lead walking. Okay, again, just walking in a straight line. As soon as he starts to surge out in front of you or walk out in front of you, you plant your front foot, turn 180 degrees. It needs to be a very sharp and abrupt turn, so that when he does hit the end of the lead, he is correcting himself, okay? And the way that the dog learns the best in this circumstance is that they learn that if they follow the handler, they don't experience that correction, and therefore they learn to engage with the handler and watch where they're going. You can see he's like staring at me in engagement here, which is fantastic. So in this part of the video, I'm just explaining about how critical it is for you guys to actually put in some practice with this stuff as well. Obviously, we can achieve some pretty amazing results with these dogs in this short period, but it really does come down to you guys putting in the practice as well and following the guidelines that we're giving you. You can see in this video here, I'm just again working on some duration sits. So when he does go to break, I'm just moving into him to use some spatial pressure to put him back into the sit, otherwise using that leash pressure by lifting upwards so his bum hits the ground. He's done super well today and super proud. Keep up the good work.